Hi, I'm Rick Dior, and today we're going to talk about strengthening the left hand using the traditional grip. I've already done several videos on the traditional grip, one called Mastering the Traditional Grip, and the other was just how to play relaxed. So if you haven't watched those yet, go back and watch those before this video. You could think of this as part 3 of that video series. So a lot of you have asked me questions about getting stronger with their left hand with the traditional grip. We've already gone over the steps to that. We'll go over those briefly right now. The first step is getting your hand to work right. So again, you want to practice working your wrist and forearm like this. So doing that, and then using your thumb, and then finally using your fingers, turning the stick over. So that gets the parts working, and then if you remember from those other videos, these bottom fingers here regulate the stick. Now it's important to have a balance point on the stick. So here you see I'm about 1/3 of the way up on the stick, and all sticks are going to be a little different. The way I determine that is just by dropping the stick with no fingers on it and figuring out where it bounces the most. So if I move forward, it bounces that much. If I move back, it bounces just a little more, and I get a little more volume. Now you don't want to be all the way on the back of your stick, because this is what will happen. It'll be dead. So it's kind of like a seesaw motion where you get two people on that seesaw and you want to balance it out. So that's how you'll determine that. So these things are really important before we start this. So again, if that's not clear, go back and look at those videos because I spend a lot of time on it. All right, so the first thing I do when I'm working on my left hand, and I do this daily, normally after I warm up, and I've just warmed up for about a half hour. So I'll start working on this left hand just by doing double strokes. Now you see there I'm doing kind of a clinch where I'm catching that second stroke, and I'm even accenting it a little. So that's a combination of thumb, these two fingers, and a very quick wrist motion, but it's not a lot of wrist. It might look like a little more than it actually is. The wrist has to move, obviously, for the fingers to take effect and to get a bounce, but I'm not really doing any work with my wrist. It's mostly fingers. And you'll see these bottom fingers here, they come up to trap the stick. Now when I increase the strokes to 3 strokes, we get this. Now it's a very relaxed motion. It's not anything having to do with your arm. If you're doing this, stop that right away. That is not going to end in anything good. All right? We don't want to drum with our shoulders and being stiff. It's all about, again, the wrist and the fingers. We can do 4 strokes. And then it starts getting a little difficult. All right, you do as many strokes as you want. If you do that, remember you're relying on some bounce strokes first, and then you're starting to add your fingers after the stick is bouncing. So I'm probably getting 2 of those bounces for free, and then the rest have to be generated, again, because of gravity on this planet. They're generated by the motion of that stick, okay? It has to be balanced, so the balance point is important. Now, the right hand, we've gone over that intensively in a lot of the videos, but you could do the same thing with that. And those of you who play match grip, it'll look just like that. All right? So that's the first part of what I practice every day. I might do this for 10 minutes, just going. I have about a half-hour regimen I do to keep my getting older left hand in shape. That's one thing we've talked about a lot in these other videos. As you get older, I know a lot of you are not as old as I am, and some of you are older, your limbs and muscles tend to stiffen up. And it's already happening with me. It's just part of getting old. It's not an injury. It's nothing like that. So I try to always practice and warm up and do these exercises to keep myself limber. And it's working because I don't feel like I've lost any of my technique. All right. So let's show you the next step that I do every day in my, let's call them physical calisthenics for my left hand. I'll take a brush in my right hand and just do an ostinato like this. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. So it's 1 EN, a 2 EN, a 3 EN, and a 4 EN. All right. And then I'll set the metronome on anywhere from 120 to 130. We'll put it here on 128. And we'll just do quarter notes now. Then I'll take some rhythms. Turn this off for a second. We'll take some rhythms from one of my books, or any book will work. In this case, we're using page 50 from my 3 Camps book. That coincides with, I believe, page 9 of my drum set book. It's similar. I'll correct myself on the screen if I remembered that incorrectly. Anyway, so we'll take that and we'll put the metronome on, and we'll start the right hand doing this. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then with my left hand, I'll play those rhythms. So I'll do those all the way through. Sometimes I'll do one bar over and over again. I vary it, and I have lots and lots of books with rhythms. Really, anything will work. Just as long as you have something to play with that left hand that's more than 1 stroke. You want 2 strokes or 3 strokes. In this case, these are 2 and 3 stroke groupings. All right. Now, let's do a little more of that actually for you. I'll start on line 3, and I want you to watch. I'll do a close-up. I want you to watch how my left hand is working on the 2 and 3 stroke rhythms. Here's line 3. 1, 2, 3, 4. So you can see there how it's, the thumb is trapping the stick and the bottom fingers are coming up. Again, it's not any kind of violent motion. It's just, I'm just dropping it. All right. Now what we're going to do is we're going to play this whole page for you. I'll probably make a few mistakes. Let's see. I don't have my glasses. I actually sat on my glasses, so I don't know if any of you have done that. And I have to get new ones, but with this COVID thing, it's a little bit tricky. So we'll see how it goes. 1, 2, and 2. I think that was mostly right. So I love doing these kinds of exercises with both hands. In other words, my right hand will be playing something consistently, and then my left hand will be playing the actual exercise. That's very close to a live or just a practical kind of drum set thing. So rarely will I do that by itself, just going. I like to use both hands, and I recommend you do that too. Simulate any kind of real playing environment. One hand development is fine, again, doing. There's nothing wrong with that, but anything you can practice with both hands at the same time is going to do you a lot of good coordination-wise. The next step that I do is I'll go to the Joe Morello Master Studies book, and I'll start working on some Muller technique. Now, as you all mostly know, I've gone over this before, that technique is when you throw the stick like this. Now, the original technique was really high. He would do that, Sanford Muller, okay? When I studied with Morello, he would do it much lower. It was more practical, obviously. So the fill-ins in his book in Volume 1 start on page 66. And what those are is you're just doing a consistent Muller left hand. You don't have to do it this way. That's just the way that I did it with him. So you're doing that. And again, it's very relaxed. And I'm not going really high, so I'm not smashing that accent. I'm not going. It's not violent. It's very subtle. So if you set your metronome, in this case, we would do it on triplets because we're in 12/8. So. And then the left hand, the right hand fills in. Again, we're developing the left hand. You can do them backwards, but the whole goal is to develop that left hand because it's going to be weaker if you're a right-handed player. So we set that, and then the right hand fills in. So here's number 1. Number 2. This is number 3. All right, and then you just do that all the way through. This is a very difficult section of the book. You're definitely going to want to do it slower than that. You might want to start at 100, which would be. Just make sure you're not using your arm when you're doing that. Very relaxed. Now you'll see on my right hand how I'm not using my wrist, I'm more dropping the stick. So I'm not going, but I'm letting that stick bounce in a very loose manner. And I suggest you do that as well. There's lots of ways to play these things. There's no one perfect way. But again, this is what, when I worked with him, this is what we did. The whole thing was to be really loose. And if you ever want to get any kind of speed and make it sound good, you want to play legato. In other words, long, kind of relaxed notes. You don't want to play, you don't want to do that. All right, so get that left hand going. That's number 5. And then there's other ones too where you're playing off the beat. So it'd be like this. So those are upbeat triplets. They're much, much more difficult. So I might spend, an hour on this a day. And it's a huge section. Also in this section are Fillin Studies with groups of 2 and 4. So you're going, starting on page, you can see it, 70. You're doing this. So I personally find those a lot more difficult than doing the triplets. All right. Now, these will really, really strengthen that left hand. I guarantee it. Once I started doing these with him when I was about, 16 or 17, everything changed for me. Before then, I'd marched some drum corps. I wasn't stiff, but, I wasn't loose. Once I started doing this with my shoulders and letting the stick do the work instead of dictating, with my wrists and my arms, my whole drumming world changed. So, if you want to go to that next level of having really great sound and phrasing and legato playing and making those drums sound great by not just hitting them like this, but just letting that stick bounce off of them, this is the way to do it. There's really no other way. And this is what I work on with a lot of my students. And not everybody can do it as well as others. You have to be loose. You have to practice a lot. But the whole idea is to let the stick do the work. That's the most important thing. It doesn't matter if it's a heavy stick. These sticks right here are a pretty heavy zebra wood. They're probably about 72, 73 grams. And they do a lot of the work. But when I play with a lighter stick, this is leopard wood. These are probably 60 grams. I can go even faster. All right, and I will switch sticks a lot. That's one thing that I do. I have 4 pairs of sticks here. These, and then these are leopard wood, and these are some really heavy wangi. When I warm up, I start playing with these heavy sticks because they get, I go slow. That's important. But they get my blood pumping, and I use the weight of the stick to do the work. Again, use the weight of the stick. Because it's a heavier stick, you can actually use the weight of that stick to do more work. You actually have to work harder with a lighter stick because the stick is lighter and it's not going to bounce as much. Of course, you can't play gigs with sticks this heavy. It would be bad. All right? You do some damage. It'd be hard to play really subtle things. Playing with a heavier stick is not going to affect your playing in a negative way as long as the diameter is the same as your regular stick. So instead of using a thicker stick like a marching stick, use the same diameter. That will affect your playing because that affects your grip, the way your fingers work, the distance between your fingers and your thumb. So that's extremely important to remember. And I've said that a million times on all these videos, so y'all should know that by now. So that's the process I use for developing these left-handed things. So once again, I'll do clinches. Then I'll take that clinch and I'll do it with something with my right hand. So I used that ostinata before of this. 1, 2, 3, 4, and so forth. So and I would definitely suggest improvising with that. I do that on a regular basis. And once again, you can do these rhythms. So 1 EN, 2 EN, 3 EN, 4 EN, or 1 and the 2 and the 3 and the 4. All right? So any of those rhythms work. Now, applying this to some two-handed exercises is also important. So the 3 camps, any of those exercises are good. Anything that repeats, like paradiddles. You can do any of the Pratt, the Wilcoxon etudes, really anything like that. But just getting those hands to work together, that's why those etudes are so important. You're also going to want to practice doubles. One thing I like to do is do them slow and then do them fast. So we'll switch sticks here, a little heavier stick. So. So you see there, I'm just playing the accents with my fingers and a little bit of wrist. All right, and I'm keeping those doubles going with the bounce. And that's what those exercises will do for you. A lot of people's doubles tend to sound like this. And that's because they're not letting the stick bounce and they're not using their fingers. And, again, gravity, anytime you play anything on this planet, each time it bounces, it's going to get lower and softer. So the whole goal is to reinforce the bounce. You can do triple stroke rolls as well. There's an exercise I like that goes like this. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1. Triplet, 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 triplet. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. So I'm playing groups of triplets, triple stroke roll, and then I'm playing them within triplets like nines. So 1, 2, 3, 4, triplet, triplet, 1, 2, 3, 4, triplet, triplet. If you see that left hand, you see how the fingers are working there. It's very challenging, but that's great for playing jazz because you can get lots of strokes on that left hand, and they're not loud. The other last thing I want to mention is keeping your hands kind of low when you do this. So you don't need to come up way high. It's low. So if you see that triple stroke roll, the trick is to keep it down lower. All right, even doubles when you practice those. You'll see those accents only coming up about, maybe about 8, 9 inches. Everything else is just about 2 inches off that drum. And if you want to work on that, which is great for that left hand, you just go to page 48 of my book and just play a straight roll like this. And then play the rhythms as accents. And then you can even do it with the double strokes on page 49. All right, so that works pretty well for that. Sometimes you end up playing a little bit of triplets, but that's all good. So hopefully this will help you get on the road to getting that left hand strong. Again, it's never too late, even if some of you out there, I know some of you viewers are in your 60s, you've written me. I think it's fantastic that you're doing this, picking it up maybe in retirement. That's awesome. And I have lots of students, private students like that, I have some who are in their 70s. And they played a long time ago, and then they got into life and work and family, and then they came back, and, their hands are kind of rough, and they used to play those, so they know, and then they get it back, when they do this stuff, within 2 or 3 months, they got it back, which is great to watch. I love it. All right, so I hope this helps, and we'll see you next time. Thanks.